March 1983, Red Sea coast, Sudan. A military patrol opens fire on a beach at midnight. Inside the last rubber boat, a family of 7, 60 seconds from being left behind forever, one man doesn't run for the water. He charges toward the rifles, screaming at the officer about the tourism ministry, about night diving excursions, about careers ending by personal order of the chief of staff. And he names the chief of staff by name. The rifles come down. The boat escapes. 8 hours earlier, that same man was pouring drinks for tourists. That is the cover. A fully operational luxury resort with real guests, real revenue, real dive instructors built entirely by Mossad inside an enemy state that would execute every member of staff for what they do after dark. For 4 years, Israeli intelligence officers smiled at Egyptian army colonels, British SAS commandos, and senior Sudanese officials over breakfast while running 17 secret desert airlifts in the same trucks that carried dive tanks. The lie worked so completely that the only thing that killed it was their own prime minister answering one question at a press conference. How did a fake resort secretly rescue 7,000 people? And why did every enemy fail where their own government succeeded? It begins with a man named Daniel Limor standing in a ruin and seeing something nobody else would see. The year is 1981. Ethiopia is fracturing. A military junta called the Derg has classified the Beta Israel Ethiopian Jews who maintained their faith in near-total isolation for centuries, largely unknown to the outside Jewish world, as enemies of the state. The land is confiscated. Movement is restricted. Communities are targeted. By the late 1970s, they are dying, and they have started walking. Thousands of them cross 600 kilometers on foot through the Horn of Africa, through jungle, bandit territory, and desert controlled by armed factions who rob and kill without consequence to reach Sudanese refugee camps near the Ethiopian border. The journey kills 1,700 people before they arrive. Nearly 4,000 more people die in the camps from disease and starvation. A man named Fareda Aklum survives both, reaches Khartoum, and sends letters to anyone who might listen. One of those letters reaches Jerusalem. Prime Minister Menachem Begin reads it, looks at the camp photographs, and gives Mossad a single order. Get them out. All of them. The problem is immediate and structural. Sudan has no diplomatic relations with Israel. The two countries are technically at war. An Israeli operative identified on Sudanese soil faces arrest, interrogation, torture, and execution in that order if they are lucky. There is no embassy, no safe house network, no legal foothold of any kind. Small extractions exist when individual families moved on forged documents through Europe, but the math is brutal. Thousands are arriving at those camps. Hundreds are dying while paperwork moves. The current operation isn't failing. It is just thousands of lives too small and thousands of miles too slow. Mossad sends scouts into Sudan for months, searching for a base of operations with a legitimate explanation for foreign staff, access to the coast, and enough remoteness that no one looks closely at what happens after dark. Daniel Limor drives north from Port Sudan along the Red Sea Coast Road and finds what he is looking for, except it looks, to any reasonable observer, like a total loss. An Italian development company built a holiday village here in the early 1970s. 15 red-roofed bungalows around a coastal lagoon, a kitchen, a dining hall, a coral reef offshore that travel writers described as one of the most spectacular dive sites in the world. The Sudanese government promised roads, water, and electricity. It delivered none of them. The Italians waited years, accepted reality, and walked away. What remained was rotting wood, cracked concrete, sandstorm-shattered windows, and rusting kitchen equipment baking in the Red Sea heat. 70 kilometers from Port Sudan, 200 kilometers from the nearest functioning infrastructure. Limor doesn't see a ruin. He sees the only explanation that works. A functioning resort accounts for everything an intelligence operation requires cover for. Foreign nationals on staff, Tourism business, boats, outboard motors, fuel, dive excursions, generators, satellite communications equipment, vehicles moving at odd hours, remote facility management. Europeans wandering a Sudanese beach at night with too many keys and no clear reason to be there, eccentric hospitality professionals. The cover isn't just plausible, it has to be real because a fake resort fools no one who shows up expecting a room. Mossad moves within weeks. A shell company is registered in Switzerland. Two fictional European entrepreneurs are constructed on paper with the biographical depth that survives a background check. They approach Sudan's tourist corporation with an offer to lease the abandoned site for $320,000. The Sudanese Tourist Corporation, which has had zero competing offers for years, signs immediately. The paperwork enters Sudanese government records under a Swiss company name. In a one-party state, a government stamp is indistinguishable from a second passport. Mossad now holds a legal lease on enemy territory, and not one Sudanese official knows who is on the other side of the deal. The build-out takes months. Diesel generators, water desalination systems, electrical cable, professional dive equipment, European alcohol for the bar, and satellite communications established under the cover of remote resort management, for the actual signal runs to Tel Aviv. The dive storeroom stays permanently locked because it contains the radio. Every piece of infrastructure carries two explanations: the one guests receive and the true one. A Mossad field officer named Yola takes the first reservation calls a German dive agency, a Thursday afternoon in November, and writes the booking into a ledger under a company name that is not hers. She will run this resort for the next 4 years. She does not know yet what will cost her. The agents arriving for their first operational rotation are former Israeli naval commandos and Mossad field officers trained for infiltration and hostile extractions. Now they are practicing cocktail recipes and memorizing guest names. The first real tourists arrive at Europeans with real money and real expectations, wanting world-class diving and decent food. They get both. Positive reviews appear in European dive publications. Word spreads. Arouse is a hidden gem remote, beautifully run, free of the crowds packing Egypt's dive sites. A functioning resort accounts for everything an intelligence operation requires cover for, and the cover isn't just plausible. It has to be real. Real bookings, real reviews, real revenue, because a fake business fools no one who shows up expecting the real thing. But if you are looking to start something real, a legitimate business presence that actually works, it used to take months and a team you couldn't afford. That's what makes today's sponsor, Odoo, worth talking about. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software with more than 45 apps that help you run your business smoothly in one place. Odoo's website app lets you build a professional website in minutes, not months. Their website configurator walks you through 4 steps. Start by picking your type of site, industry, and goal. Then, choose your colors palette or upload your logo, add pages and features, and select a theme. Now you have a fully structured site ready to customize. No code, no developer. Just drag and drop every block exactly where you want it. Then customize text, images, add animations. Everything is customizable, and it's intuitive enough for a complete beginner but flexible enough for someone who actually knows what they're doing. Even if you're lacking creativity, Odoo integrates AI that helps you with copywriting and generates text based on your needs. Try the website app today for free. The first app is free, for life. That includes unlimited hosting and support, plus a free custom domain for your first year. Click the link in the description or go to odoo.com and build your site for free today. But not one refugee has been moved yet. The resort is alive, the cover is holding, and the first extraction convoy is about to roll into the Sudanese desert on a road with no lights, carrying people it has no legal explanation for, through a country that would execute everyone in those trucks if the trucks were stopped. What does it take to drive 700 kilometers through a military dictatorship with 200 people hidden in the back, and then serve breakfast when you return? And what kind of guest list turns a luxury resort into the most dangerous room in Sudan? The dual life begins in the morning when the resort opens and does not stop for 4 years. By day, dive briefings at dawn, breakfast service, equipment checks, beach barbecues, sunset drinks on the terrace while the Red Sea turns copper. The agents wear shorts and polo shirts. They smile. They remember the German diver's coffee preference and the British couple's anniversary and which Egyptian officer prefers the bungalow closest to the water. They perform hospitality so completely that guests write letters to European travel agencies praising the warmth of the staff. By night, Toyota pickup trucks loaded in darkness, engines running before the Sudanese kitchen staff have finished clearing dinner. The cover story for local employees is a supply run to Khartoum or a meeting with Red Cross contacts near Gedaref or vague inland business. The excuses are thin. Confidence carries them. The convoy rolls without headlights. Visibility on those roads at those hours is a liability navigating 5 to 6 hours by starlight, and the accumulated memory of a route driven until it became instinct. At the refugee camps near the Ethiopian border, Ethiopian community organizers have done the most dangerous invisible work in the entire system, identifying Beta Israel families inside camps where privacy is architectural impossibility, maintaining absolute secrecy among thousands of people, organizing selected groups to move with no advance notice and no written record of any kind. The signal is sometimes a whistle, sometimes just an engine cutting off in the dark and 100 people rising out of the desert toward the headlights, 1 to 200 people loaded per run. The convoy turns around and covers 700 kilometers back through military checkpoints. Friday nights are preferred. A significant portion of Sudanese soldiers are off duty, and those on duty are manageable with whiskey, cigarettes, and a foreign businessman projecting the calm authority of someone with connections no checkpoint soldier wants to test. At the beach north of the resort, Israeli naval commandos arrive by Zodiac from vessels waiting beyond Sudanese territorial waters. Families transfer into the rubber boats. The boats motor out to the ship. The ship disappears east. The agents drive back, arrive before dawn, change clothes, walk into the dining hall, ask guests how they slept. If you want to understand how operations like this stay buried for decades, subscribe. This channel exists to find the ones history forgotten. Sleep deprivation in an intelligence operation is not discomfort. It is a threat multiplier with a compounding interest rate. Tired agents make small errors. Small errors in a dictatorship don't stay small. The agents run the night operation and then run the day operation, and the two schedules grind against each other without rotation, without adequate rest, without end. Then the guest list changes, and the real danger begins. European divers are manageable. What arrives next is not. Egyptian army officers on leave. Military attachés looking for a quiet coast with no questions. Saudi Falcon hunters with armed security details. British SAS commandos who describe the trip to their commanders as a wilderness survival exercise and file reports about desert hardship while sleeping in air-conditioned bungalows. Yola receives a personal compliment from the wife of the Egyptian ambassador to Sudan, who tells her how much she appreciates the resort's presence on this beautiful coast. Yola thanks her and keeps smiling. Sudanese tourism ministry inspectors visit, write favorable reports, and leave. Senior government officials take tables in the restaurant. Every one of these guests is a loaded variable. A Canadian Jewish visitor spends several days studying the staff and quietly concludes they are not European. The tell, he says later, is the way they prepare salad. He checks out without saying a word to anyone. Lucky for 12 people's lives. But the margin is always exactly that thin. One question at the wrong angle. One piece of equipment with the wrong text on it. 1 half-second hesitation before answering. The operation survives not because it is invisible, but because the performance never breaks. And performance, sustained under that pressure, for that long, has a cost that doesn't appear on any operational ledger. The coastal patrols intensify through 1983. More Sudanese military on the roads and beaches, more boats visible offshore at night. A convoy that had run Friday routes for 2 years turns back twice in a single month, once for a checkpoint that wasn't there the week before, once for a military vehicle that sat at a crossroads for 40 minutes before moving. The margin for error reaches zero. The marine route, which has moved hundreds of people, is finished. The operation needs a new exit, and the one Mossad chooses next is, by every rational measure, more operationally insane than loading refugees into rubber dinghies on a Sudanese beach. What happens when you decide to land military aircraft in enemy territory 17 times? And what does it do to a person to run that operation by day from a resort dining room where the people hunting you are ordering fresh fish? Mossad pulls the beach route and replaces it with something that should not work at all. Israeli Air Force C-130, Hercules transport aircraft, landing in the open Sudanese desert at night. Without lights, without filed flight plans, without air traffic control contact. In a country that would treat an Israeli military aircraft as an act of war, requiring an immediate military response. Not once, 17 times. Picture the operation from the ground first. 100 to 200 people stand in total darkness in the middle of the Sudanese desert, waiting for something most of them have no prior experience to frame. Many have never seen an aircraft at close range. Some have never seen one at all. They have walked 600 kilometers from Ethiopia expecting to die in Sudan. The concept of mechanical extraction from a patch of unmarked desert is not something that fits inside lived experience. When the C-130 engines become audible, 4 turboprops at full approach, power tearing through the desert silence from kilometers out. Some refugees fall to their knees, others run. Gad Shimron, one of the Mossad agents present at multiple airlifts, writes later that others looked skyward with the expression of people watching prophecy arrive in a physical form they hadn't anticipated. They had been told they would reach Jerusalem on eagle's wings. A military transport descending out of the Sudanese dark was, for people who had survived what they had survived, close enough. Agents and commandos physically retrieve the ones who run, walk them back toward the aircraft, explain in Amharic that the noise is the destination. Everyone boards. The loadmasters work at combat speed. Loading takes minutes. The aircraft rolls, lifts, and is gone, swallowed by the night, climbing hard out of Sudanese airspace, on a flight path that exists on no radar record that will ever be made public. The agents stand alone in the sudden silence. Infrared strobes switch off. The desert returns to black. Shimron describes that moment, the empty quiet after the aircraft vanishes, as elation in its most stripped form. Something irreducible. Then they get back in the trucks, arrive before dawn, serve breakfast. How did they find a runway in the first place? Agents spent months in the Sudanese interior, scouting for a strip of hard-packed earth flat enough and long enough for a fully loaded C-130 to land and take off without structural failure. They found one unmarked, not on any official map, identifiable from the air only by pilots given precise coordinates in advance. They measured it, staked at it, marked it with infrared strobes visible only through night vision equipment. Then they coordinated with IAF pilots who would fly from Israel, cross hostile airspace without authorization, and land blind on a surface that had never been inspected or certified as a runway by any aviation authority on Earth. 17 airlifts, 2 years. Each coordinated from the Arouse resort by the same people managing dive equipment and generator maintenance during the day. No real runway, no support infrastructure, no authorization from any governing body. Not one aircraft was lost. By mid-1984, the cover is 4 years old, and the operation has moved thousands of people. And Yola, the agent who took the first reservation call, who smiled at the Egyptian ambassador's wife, who has performed a version of herself that is not herself for 4 consecutive years, says something later that stops you. She says she didn't want to go back, that she had become completely the other person, not performing anymore, not covering. She had become someone else so thoroughly that she couldn't locate the original. That is not a metaphor for professional dedication. That is what a sustained cover identity does to a human being when it works too well. In late 1984, Operation Moses launches a parallel, larger airlift organized directly from Khartoum with the tacit cooperation of senior Sudanese officials paid enough to face the right direction at the right times. Between Moses and the Arouse infrastructure, the scale of what is happening inside Sudan has become enormous. And enormous in covert operations is another word for visible. In the weeks before January 1985, something shifts in the texture of the questions Sudanese officials ask at the resort, slightly longer pauses before accepting answers. A tourism ministry representative who returns for a second visit without scheduling it in advance. Nothing provable, nothing actionable. The kind of atmospheric change that experienced intelligence officers learn to read like weather. On January 5, 1985, Israeli Prime Minister Shimon Peres publicly confirms Operation Moses in response to press inquiries. He announces that Israel has rescued thousands of Ethiopian Jews from Sudan. The Arab world responds within hours. Governments pressure Khartoum. The Sudanese military begins active nationwide searches for Israeli operatives. The people the agents had spent 4 years protecting the operation from now know exactly what to look for and where to start looking. What does an intelligence team do when their own government announces their existence to their enemies, and what happens when the political ground under the entire operation collapses in 72 hours? The announcement is not diplomatic clumsiness. It is a catastrophe with a 48-hour fuse. Arab governments press Sudan from multiple directions simultaneously. The Sudanese military, already suspicious and now politically incentivized, begins hunting Israeli operatives with institutional urgency. Ethiopian community contacts who organized refugee movements inside the camps are detained and interrogated. The network of carefully maintained silences that kept the operation invisible for 4 years begins pulling apart from the inside, connection by connection. Names surface. Locations are given. The noose tightens around people who are still standing inside it. Mossad sends one order: evacuate Arouse immediately. The problem is specific and maddening. Tourists are asleep in the bungalows. Real paying guests, including a couple from Munich who have already booked a return stay and left a review praising the fresh fish, who have no reason on earth to suspect the resort they loved is about to cease to exist. There is no mechanism for explanation. No cover story that accounts for the entire staff vanishing before sunrise. The business built to be believable is now too believable to abandon. Cleanly, it has actual customers at the precise moment the people running it need to cease to exist. Before dawn, Yola locks the reception desk for the last time. The agents board their vehicles and drive into the desert. A pre-positioned extraction team lifts them out on a C-130 from a desert strip north of the resort, the same aircraft infrastructure that moved thousands of refugees, now running one final pickup in reverse. Both vehicles go aboard. The Sudanese license plates come off and go on the plane. What remains? Furniture, dive equipment, kitchen stores. Coffee already measured for a morning, the staff will not be there to serve. When the guests wake, the offices are empty. No managers, no dive instructors, no kitchen crew. A handwritten note promising refund. The cover is done, but 4 Mossad officers are still in Khartoum. In April 1985, a military coup removes President Jafar Nimeri while he is traveling abroad. He does not return. The streets of Khartoum change overnight checkpoints at intersections that were open the week before. Libyan intelligence vehicles outside hotels that served foreign businessmen. soldiers who look at European faces with a new quality of attention. The new regime needs immediate Arab world credibility and selects the most direct available path, publicly hunting Zionist infiltrators. Every Sudanese official who had been paid to create blind spots around the Aras operation border commanders, tourism ministers, senior bureaucrats, is now in exile, in prison, or actively offering up what they know in exchange for political survival. One gives the location of the Mossad safe house in Khartoum. The last 4 agents are inside it. Their identities are burned. Their contacts have fled or been arrested. The search radius shrinks by the hour. Mossad has no remaining network in Sudan, no embassy, no diplomatic status, no legal mechanism of any kind to reach their people, no assets capable of getting to them before the search does. One evening in April 1985, CIA Station Chief Milt Bearden opens his door in Khartoum and finds 3 Mossad officers on his step. Composed, he recalls later. Remarkably composed, given the circumstances outside. A 4th arrives the following day. They have come to the only door in the city that might still open for them. What the CIA devises next is the last act of an operation that has always hidden real things inside real containers. And this time, the container is as literal as it gets. Bearden calls Washington that night. The request reaches Vice President George H.W. Bush, a former CIA director, who understands in precise operational terms what it means if the answer is no, and Bush authorizes the extraction personally. While the plan is being built, the 4 agents wait inside Bearden's network of safe locations, moved house to house through CIA contacts, unable to use their own communications equipment because the signal could be triangulated. They read. They watch videotapes. They wait while the search outside closes in concentric rings around a city that has run out of places to hide. The solution the CIA builds is architecturally consistent with everything a Rouse always was, a completely legitimate mechanism used to move something that cannot officially exist. Diplomatic mail. Under international law, U.S. diplomatic pouches are legally inviolable. No foreign customs authority, no police force, no intelligence service, Sudanese, Libyan, or otherwise, can open or inspect them under any circumstances. The protection is absolute, codified in the Vienna Convention, respected even between countries actively at war. A crate labeled U.S. diplomatic mail is legally untouchable. CIA technicians build 4 wooden crates, large enough for a person, each fitted with air holes and internal breathing tubes. Consider what this moment means for the people climbing into them. These are agents who spent 4 years constructing a luxury resort from ruins, who learned to mix cocktails and remember the German diver's coffee order and smile at the wife of the Egyptian ambassador while running secret airlifts in the same trucks that carried dive tanks. They negotiated checkpoints, managed coral reef excursions, served fresh fish under the stars to the colonels hunting them. They did all of this, and the final act of the operation is being measured for a box. Each crate is labeled, sealed with official State Department authentication, and loaded into an embassy vehicle. At the gate, word arrives that Sudanese authorities have been tipped that Bearden is sheltering Israelis. A military helicopter begins circling the tarmac. The aircraft is still on the ground. The window is not closing. It has already closed. Bearden tells the pilot to roll. The plane moves for the runway without clearance from Khartoum Tower, which is transmitting questions across the radio frequency that the cockpit does not answer. The aircraft lifts. By the time it lands in Nairobi, the agents are out of the crates and standing on Kenyan tarmac, alive because one CIA station chief made a unilateral decision and one flight crew elected not to wait for a tower that would have said no. The operation is over. The final count, 4 years of continuous activity. 7,000 Ethiopian Jews extracted from Sudan and resettled in Israel. 17 clandestine C-130 landings on unmarked desert. Hundreds of Zodiac evacuations from open coastline. a resort that generated legitimate profit from real guests, Egyptian intelligence officers, British special forces, Sudanese government officials, European divers, while funding and concealing one of the most sustained covert humanitarian corridors in post-war history. Not one aircraft lost, not one agent killed. Fareda Aklam, the man whose letter from Khartoum started all of it, made it to Israel. His fate after that is not part of any public record that exists. The Arouse holiday village was never demolished. It stands on the Sudanese Red Sea coast today, returning to the ruin Limor found in 1981. The 15 bungalows are there. The dining hall, the reception desk Yola locked before dawn. The lagoon, the coral reefs are still alive beneath the water, indifferent to everything that happened above them. 7,000 people grew old because a handful of agents sustained 2 complete lives. One in sunlight, one in darkness for 4 years without breaking. They built the lie so completely and held it so long that it stopped functioning as a lie. It became a real business, a real revenue stream, and a real workplace with real reviews. And then they left before sunrise and left the coffee measured for a morning they were never going to be there for. They were not undone by Sudan. They were not undone by Libya. They were not undone by the Egyptian officers eating in their restaurant or the Sudanese officials writing favorable reports to the tourism ministry. They were undone by a prime minister answering a reporter's question in Jerusalem on a Tuesday afternoon in January. The enemy never broke the cover. Their own government announced it. If you want to understand what it takes to live a double life so completely that even the people hunting you trust you, I already covered the story of the Cuban FBI agent who spent 700 days having breakfast with killers inside the Gambino crime family and almost became a sworn member of the Italian mafia. The Cuban FBI agent who fooled the Italian mafia for 3 years. Watch it next.